Thank you all for coming here. Exciting time for me to come back to campus actually in a classroom environment, right? I spent most of my time outside the class. There are a couple of my friends who are going to join in today also. I took the liberty of inviting them just to honor the fact that they spent most of the time giving me proxy. So I felt it would be good that I get them to also come and actually do something in class. Anyway, that's just a light moment here. So great. So let's move on to the topic itself. So when Professor Arshinder and Ari spoke to me about sharing my experiences in the field of logistics, I wanted to make it little relevant, right? And ULIP, which is the Unified Logistics Interface Platform, is a new system, new in the sense that it was released to only specific companies to basically develop use cases, to mature the system. But the background is that they have been working on this system for the last 6 years. So the government of India, they have an agency which in joint venture with NEC of Japan has actually worked on this in the last 6 years, and they have done all the hard work of actually going to 8 ministries. So these ministries are the ones which control railways, for example, Ministry of Surface Transport, and so on and so forth. You all will see in the slides, and done the hard work of integrating and developing 36 systems, released 115 APIs, 1800 data fields. So what does it all mean? Essentially it means that this is if you think of payments, for example, right, and we've all read maybe 1,000 articles on how UPI, right, Unified Payments Interface, has completely transformed payments, right, and made maybe India #1 in the world, right. The cost of transaction is near zero. So what it has done to the fintech industry, essentially ULIP is going to do to the logistics industry. And believe me, for us in logistics, it's not only a game changer, it was actually manna from the gods, especially for my company, because when we heard about ULIP and we were waiting for it to get launched, it was in my company, which is Instavans, we have a product called Smart Truck, and over the last 4 years we have painstakingly built a transport management system, right, and that was basically, I'll tell you a little bit about that as we go along. And suddenly the system comes out which connects us to everything, right. So think of a UPI moment. When UPI came out, a lot of startups launched, fintech startups, and they started building products, right. In our case, it was a product that we already had, and suddenly we got this gift of ULIP. So ULIP is very exciting, not only for us, of course, it's exciting for everyone who wants to solve problems or challenges in logistics. That's how important it is, right. So that's the reason why I picked this topic. So let's get started. I will try not to read from any slide. So essentially, whenever the slide is there, you can parallelly do multitasking and listen to me and maybe read some stuff here, and just put up your hand if there's a question. Of course, this is only for people who are here, because I can't see if online any hand is going up, but I'll take those questions in the later part of the seminar. So essentially the challenge in logistics is it's a huge industry. Road trucking itself is about $200 billion per annum. But what happens is that you've got millions of shippers, you've got 59,000 odd transporters, and this is quite relevant information and accurate information, because this is as per GST data, right. But the problem is that they don't have any customer facing technology. My background is that I was born in a business family, and post 1990 graduation I joined the family business. So from 1990 till about 2015 I was actually running a logistics company, and I've gone through that entire experience of what it was to do everything manually. I hated everything about the business, right, because we were actually just pushing paper all the time, right. The value add was actually honestly very little, right, and this is where the problem lies, that there was no technology which was customer facing, right, because in the end what are we all doing? The end customer is the one who has to benefit. So think of this problem in this particular way, right? All of us use Swiggy, Zomato, Uber, Ola, right? Now, if you order a 150 rupee meal, right? Not only you have infinite choices, leave that aside, you know exactly when that delivery boy is going to reach your location, right? And you can literally time it and then step out of your hostel room, come down. I'm presuming that the guy is not allowed inside the hostel, right? And you can pick up your 150 package, right? That's the B2C world. In the B2B world, it's a 60 lakh rupee shipment, and the guy has no idea where the truck is, right? B2C 150 rupees order size, order value, and there's so much information available. B2B, there's nothing available. So our tagline, in fact, which actually connects to our customer, is trying to bring the B2C experience to the B2B world. This is what we are trying to do as, you know, a goal, right? So actually, where should I point this, because it doesn't sort of move immediately? Should I obviously can't be you know, pressing it towards the, okay, that works, yeah. I'll skip this, but essentially what we have done in our system Smart Truck is understood the entire challenges in trucking. We were till now focused only on road trucking, and we have taken care of all those challenges by basically allowing the entire ecosystem of a particular large shipper. So think of a large company, for example Tata Steel, right? Tata Steel, as you know, is one of the largest steel manufacturers in the country. You all must be knowing that they have got multiple plants, integrated steel plants. So think of the fact that to ship out those goods, they use a combination of rail and road. On the road aspect, what they move out by road, they have maybe about 100 odd contracted transporters out of that 59,000 who work for them, and it's an annual contract, right? So what our system, and there are other competitors of course who do stuff similar to us, essentially digitize the entire journey, right from load allocation to acceptance by the carriers, right, for the trucks to be placed, then the tracking, to the delivery, to the proof of delivery in electronic form, to the freight invoicing, and to the payments being made, right. This entire thing was currently, till about 4-5 years back, was completely manual, and COVID actually started to change that. Because guess what happened in COVID, right? The transport, after 4-5 weeks, obviously the engines of the economy started moving. The government had to allow trucks to move, but what happened? All the transporters, managers and clerks, the babus, were sitting in their houses, right? Everybody was working on the computers, right? They couldn't submit the bills, because what? Shippers were used to hard copies of the bills in triplicate, with, you know, the hard copy of the proof of delivery, right. So if you couldn't submit it, you couldn't get paid. If you don't get paid, the transporter refuses to place more trucks, right. So think of you know, one example of what the problem happened. So at least COVID was, I don't like saying it, was great for companies like us, right. Suddenly we everybody wanted to you know, adopt our system, right, because we were solving a problem which everybody was having. So anyway, so let me move on to, I think you all must have got a fair idea about what our system does. Just again a little bit background about the industry. You all must be reading all kinds of data. Indian economy is approximately $3 trillion dollars, right, give or plus minus maybe 100 billion, right. And there's a lot of data out there that logistics cost is about 13 to 18% of the GDP, depending on which data do you see and which data do you choose to believe. So I won't go into that you know, exact number, but what I want to point out is that when they talk about supply chain or logistics cost, transportation is just one element of it. The second element is inventory carrying cost, right, and the third is of course admin. So what the government is trying to do is essentially to make India globally competitive, is to say that, listen, hey, you know, we need to bring down the logistics cost. That's the current transportation cost. That's where the reduction potential is, and so this is the current, sorry, this much reduction can be possible, and that's what it can become, right? This is actually not a very good slide, the way the information has been portrayed, but we just picked it up from one of the Niti Aayog reports, right? So just to what I am trying to say out here is that we've got three elements to total logistics cost, right? This slide I want you all to just take a look little keenly, is that when we look at road industry size, my guess estimate is about 200 billion, and a lot of focus, if you all see, is on e-commerce logistics, right? You've got companies like Ecom Express, you've got Delivery, everybody seems to be focusing on them. I was talking to Professor Chinder a little while back, and I was just trying to point out to her that everybody misses the fact that the largest component is agriculture, right? Perishables and non-perishables, and that is such a huge segment of total logistics, and that's a problem which is right there waiting to be solved, right? And if you take a look at automotive, a lot of focus by my fellow transporters, 9 billion. E-commerce, maybe a couple of 3.5 billion. Cement, I myself have customers on Smart Truck which are mostly in cement and steel. But look at these numbers compared to agriculture. So just wanted to give you all a sort of idea about, there are opportunities on the agriculture side also. And again, remember that some portion, substantial portion, not the majority portion, is perishables, right? So that compounds the problem, right? So for example, during the season, apple season, from Himachal, thousands of trucks of apples get dispatched all over the country, right? And they obviously want trucks at any price because guess what? It's perishable commodities, right? So let's move on. Oh, it doesn't work that way too, right? Yeah, no problem. So I'll skip this because I've already talked about. Let's just now jump in, and I will keep a sense of time. Yeah, so unified logistics interface platform, right? So just a little background about what did they do. They launched it on in September 2022, and this was conditional access to essentially large enterprises, platform like ours. And the reason they did that because they knew that the system has to mature. There were a lot of things which will not work, right? They will need to fixing it because you've got ULIP, you've got all the users like us, you've got various ministries, right? So it was complex. So they have used the last 2 years to basically keep constantly fine tuning the system, right? I would suggest that everybody go to this website goulip.in and check it out, because there's a lot of interesting stuff you will see there, right? Now coming into the architecture, on top what you see is all the various ministries, right? And then you've got this gateway, and of course all of you all know about how APIs work, right? So you have the request, you get the response, and the system has been really built phenomenally well, and it's a very, very robust system. Just to give you a sense of numbers, they do about, I think till now they've done about 270 million requests. Small numbers to begin with, right? But this will soon grow into the billions. Our platform itself has done about 2% of that, right? So we are very happy about those figures because we are gaining a good experience in this. Again, just to give you an idea, some of these names might not be very familiar, but I'll just decode a couple of them. So IR is Indian Railways, and they've got a system known as the FOIS, Freight Operation and Information System. So that has been released with them. So what does it mean? Earlier, if somebody would let's say contract a freight train from the Indian Railways, just to check where the freight train is, they would have to go to the website, log in, and that would tell them the exact location of the freight train right now. That's all, nothing else, right? And what happens to a large shipper like a large, let's say Coal India? At any point of time, they've got 600 trains. So what do? go and check one by one all of them, but that is what is happening in reality, right. So, what we have now done is that we have also now integrated with voice, and we are now building out a rail cum road multimodal platform for one of our large customers. Similarly, if you take a look at Ministry of Road Transport, this I will spend a little time on later, because this is very critical, because you have got Vahan. Vahan is vehicle information, right. Sarthi is driver information, and FASTag, I think all of us know FASTag, because it is mandatory in every vehicle. And then of course, you have got e-challan, which is again all to do with commercial taxes and commercial movement of goods, right. Which else should I talk about? I think because of the limited time, we will just focus on some of what I have covered already right now. But what is important is what I said earlier: 8 ministries, 36 systems, 1800 plus fields, and 115 APIs. This is growing so fast that yesterday, when I have made the first cut of the presentation, it was at 112 APIs. This morning I had to change it to 115, because they released 3 APIs yesterday, right. So, that is the rapid kind of change which is happening in the progress which is being made, right. So, just essentially governance is there, data privacy is there, and all of us who use it. So, I will give you one example. I can take, let us say, your vehicle number, right, and I can hit the FASTag API, and every time you go through any toll gate, I can get that information, which direction and what time. But the agreement I have signed with ULIP is that I will not abuse the system, and it will be only for commercial trucks, right. So, I am just telling you that governance is a big issue, right, and they actually run the data to check that have I abused the system in any way, and if we do that, there are severe penalties against that, and of course, the worst of them all being knocked out of the system, right, and then the business is as good as done. So, that is very important. No personal information shared, etc. This is what the the website looks like. Definitely do go and explore on your own. Some of these systems which I talked about earlier, Vahan here. Why is this important? Why is Sarthi important? So, let me tell you about how transport has worked in the past, right. So, in this trucking company which my family owns, which I was the CEO of till about 2015, we used to have at least 4 or 5 trucks missing every year, and the material value would be approximately on an average about 2 crores, and then we would settle up through the insurance company, would pay the shipper, and we would settle up with the insurance companies, and we would make it part of our budgeting for the year that we will end up losing 25-30 lakhs, right. Because the point is that we could never verify adequately or in time. Essentially, somebody would, we did not own our own fleet, so we would hire from the market, and some truck driver would show up through a broker, through a well known broker, but instead of that being a genuine truck number, later on when we would verify and try to find out what happened, it would turn out to be the license plate of a scooter, right. Those things are a thing of the past now. Why? Because on real time basis we can verify all the truck information. Another small story, right. One of our large customers, which is one of the large integrated steel plants in India. So, we said, hey, you guys are totally into ESG, there is compliance, you all want zero defect, you all want zero accidents. So, now we have got this API which connects to Vahan. Every time a truck is placed, and this is about, they place about 12,000 40 tonners in a month, 12,000, right, that is a lot of volume, right. Instantly our system will verify and tell you what is the actual carrying capacity of the truck, right. So, guess what we found? We found that about 5 to 6% of the trucks were actually carrying more, because what the guy has done is that he has taken his registration papers and he has, like I think all of us must have done sometime or the other, right, modified a PDF, correct. So, the guy has gone and changed that. Second problem we had, we started hitting the Sarthi system, And when you have your own driving license, you will notice that typically all of us get the classification is LMV. We can only drive LMV, right, light motor vehicle. We found that 30+% of the truck drivers, 30+% were not even qualified to operate HCVs. 30%. What does it mean? It means that on the national highways of India, and this is going to give you nightmares, right, next time you are on a road trip, is that there's a guy with a large trailer with 40 tons of material, and he's hurtling away at 50 kilometers, 60 kilometers an hour, and he doesn't have the actual training or the license to operate a heavy vehicle. Imagine how dangerous that sounds, right? Because it's like 56 tons, the weight of the vehicle and the material that he's carrying, moving on the roads, right? Imagine the momentum and the kind of problem, right? So we brought it to the notice of our customer, and the customer said, listen, let's handle it over a period of time, right? Because if we are going to insist and bar all these drivers to, from operating trucks or moving our material, our factory will come to a standstill to that extent, right? So imagine these are the kind of problems, but it actually then starts solving problems, right? And it all just was a real-time API. So I hope you guys got some kind of an idea about what the possibilities are. Just some other systems here. Post the talk, anybody interested, I'll be very happy to share some of these presentations with you all. Benefits, I'll actually go and talk in a little bit more detail, but if you all can just read out here, you all can, obviously I've covered this in bits and pieces, right, in the last 20-25 minutes, that really essentially completely changes the scenario, right. So it's not only real time verification, it's visibility, right, and visibility is just not about tracking. Visibility allows a lot of efficiency gains from happening, right, because you can use that data, you can do a lot of predictive analytics, and essentially you can say that, listen, hey, this shipment is going to reach late, right, and what can you do to ultimately make sure the end customer still gets fulfilled, the order still gets fulfilled, right. So you can maybe trigger another shipment from closer to the final end customer location. So there's a lot of interesting things which is starting to happen. Yeah, sure.
So is ULIP envisaged also to give information about, let's say, where a truck is originating and where it is going to finish its job? Is that also possible? And is it also envisaged that they will probably aggregate requests for transport? Probably not, right? They don't care.
Yeah, so it's a great question, but think of it this way, right? So the government does not want to be in that business, right, to become a freight exchange. But what their intent is that folks like us and other companies essentially get into the space and solve this problem of, let's say, the empty return miles problem, right. You have approximately 12 million trucks in the country, out of which about 8 million are on long distance, and about 30% of the time they run empty, because you think of it this way, right. A truck moves a shipment from, let's say, Sri Perumbudur, goes to Gurgaon, right, A to B. The truck is obviously not going to come back to Chennai empty, right. So they need to get another cargo as close to B from the next pickup point, which is C. So B to C is the empty run. Then it comes to some place, let's say maybe it comes to Salem, right, and from Salem again, where is the next load going to be, which is, it comes to D and then it has to go to E. So that's again another empty run, right. So that is to the extent of, if a truck operates about 10,000 kilometers a month, 30% of the time it's running empty. I'm giving you approximate figures, but it will be accurate, plus minus 5%, right. So the government is wanting to use some of these systems. So the goal is, you all must have all heard about Gati Shakti, right. So what they have done is that they have said that, listen, hey, we are going to improve the infrastructure, and we can see the infrastructure moving, improving everywhere, right. They are also doing the relevant infrastructure, Relevant infrastructure, by that I mean they are making sure that the connectivity to the ports are improved dramatically. So you can evacuate cargo and you can push export cargo in fast in and out, right. Secondly, we all know, I think the first seminar was about rail versus road, right. That rail is, so I am not going to repeat anything about that, that rail is great for long haul and it is a substantially lower cost. So what they are doing is that they are building these multimodal logistics parks where there will be a rail terminal inside the park itself, right. So a lot of things. So one is the infrastructure part, think of it as the hardware, then you think of ULIP as the software, right. And then of course you have got the human resources, you have got the babus doing whatever they are doing, right. So that is another talk for another day, but that is what Gati Shakti is all about, right. So let me just quickly go into some use cases. So this is part of what you talked about, and these are use cases which ULIP came about, ULIP has sort of found people like us use it for. So about 200 odd or maybe more use cases have come. Many of them are common across various platforms, but we are able to do out of that 12 million trucks which I talked about, only a very small fraction actually has GPS devices. But in spite of that, the example which I was giving you about tracking through toll gate, right, still works. It is not really accurate, but typically a long haul truck goes through approximately 8 toll gates in a day. So at least 8 times in a day you can get the location, right, which ain't bad compared to no information at all, right. So there was the track and trace through FASTag, and of course voice, which is for the railways. Another interesting thing, I think some of you all or many of you all must have experienced that now when you all go to, let us say, a movie in a multiplex, the same FASTag can be used for parking, right, correct, you all must have all experienced that. So what now they have done is that this actually can, they have opened it up and made FASTag an open system, and that is very useful, just from a simple thing that in our system, for example, a carrier says that so and so vehicle is going to report, right, to pick up cargo, let us say again in Hindustan Lever factory. So as long as Hindustan Lever just puts a RFID reader which costs about 10,000 rupees, the RFID reader will read the tag number, it will hit our system, it will give the vehicle number. All is happened instantly, right. So now the system will automatically know that the truck is arrived, right. You do not even have to have a security guard. Typically there will be a security guard noting everything down, right, the vehicle number, grandfather's name, father's name, right, mobile number, etc., right. So all that can be avoided, right. Yeah, you can just have every information instantly available and also verified. I will just skip a couple of these. Process digitization I have already talked about, but this is all encompassing, right. So ice gate, air cargo systems, ultimately their entire goal is SLDE, where they are talking about that they want to develop standards for document exchange, all right. So that in logistics, through across modes, if everybody can talk on a single standard, they want to actually eliminate paperwork. Is the goal achievable? Absolutely. Will it take time? Absolutely. The answer is absolutely once again. So yeah, so let us move on. Third party transporter validation, I already talked about the problem, the horror cases of thefts and hijackings, etc., right. Just a little bit about 270 million API hits processed, and this is going to be exponential, right. It is going to become 2 billion next year, then it is going to become 20 billion, and it is going to become 200 billion, right. So it is really moving fast, and about 83 plus applications have been developed by folks like ourselves who have done that, right. Keeping track of time, yeah, these are some of the companies. We are right there. Instavans is the name of our company. Yeah, so while you saw use cases, just something interesting I thought I will cover in about a minute. So when we initially participated in the hackathon, they of course did not sign agreements and give access to anybody, right. You had to prove that you had the right ideas, you had the system development capability, you had a proper company, right. So some of the ideas we, of course, I think everybody came up with this idea about real time visibility for every trip, right, just by using FASTag. So fine, no problem, this is as simple as it gets. We actually came up with this other idea and we built the entire thing in around 6 hours. So what we said was that, you have, I don't know how many of you all are aware, but the price of diesel and petrol varies from state to state, because petroleum products are not under GST. So each state gets to fix their own VAT. So this is a little dated information, but I think it's still accurate. For example, the price of diesel varies from 80 to 94 rupees state to state. So think of this truck driver who is always going, let's say from, this particular example is from Hubli to Jamshedpur. They are creatures of habit, right? They like to stick to 2 states. Most truck drivers, language issues or whatever, multiple reasons, I won't get into that, are creatures of habit. So they will do Karnataka and maybe Jharkhand, Bihar, West Bengal, right, and do back and forth. And because they don't know better, they will end up always going through the same routes. But what's happening in the background? New toll gates are always coming up, right? On that route, the person is taking, on the other routes too. The prices of diesel are changing. States are changing the VAT amount, right? And the guy doesn't know better. So we actually showed that you can actually game the system, right? And if you put the fuel tank capacity, you put your mileage, right? Because we have these APIs and we have the real time data on what's the diesel price at different bunks. We can tell them a schedule that is in, hey, don't use that route, use route 3. And your overall cost will be 12% lower. So we suggested that, and I don't think that was taken very well, because somebody of course looked at that particular idea and said, listen, hey, this is going to reduce the government revenues, right? Because you are telling them that don't fill up diesel in this state, do it in the other state, right? But then that was the idea. So very simple idea. So what I am trying to get across out here is that sometimes very impactful ideas are also very simple. So my message here in a small way would be that don't look for very complicated problems, right? Sometimes the problem is there, identify the problem, and there might be just a very simple, elegant solution to that, right? Then moving on to the big idea that we had, right? So this is an idea which is very near to my heart, and we want to do this. I've been trying to actually build a freight exchange, I think, for the last 24 years, and the right time hasn't come even to date. So many of you all must have heard about freight exchanges like maybe Black Buck, Revigo. Anybody has heard about the, so they've just not been able to succeed. Why? For multiple reasons. Essentially, the challenge is, think of, let's say, you are a large shipper, right? You work through a transporter, as the example I gave you, right? Tata Steel having 100 transporters. They don't have their own trucks. They get it from the market, but they get it through a broker, right? So that there are a number of intermediaries essentially in this entire change, and it's all based on trust, right? So if today somebody launches a freight exchange and you want to go in and get a truck which is going to carry 50 lakhs of your goods, right? And you want that truck at a fixed price and want to book and pay for it, you can do that when you are booking, let's say, a flight ticket, right? Imagine a flight ticket, when you book, you go to Make My Trip, you go to Clear Trip or whatever, right? And there are fixed schedules, there are fixed number of seats in each airline, in each that particular aircraft. So it's a very easy problem to solve. They just are connected to those reservation systems, the price pops up, you book it, right? Now think of 12 million trucks, not with a schedule. Trucks don't need airports. So starting points are infinite, ending points are infinite, and then you want to make it as booking a truck as easy as booking an airline ticket. Now think of that massive problem. And you are not very sure whether the truck driver who actually comes and takes your load will run away with the material. Right? That's how complex the problem is, right? But what has happened here is that because of the things available with ULIP, the trust element is totally taken care of. Using a combination of Vahan, Sarthi and Aadhaar, you can verify instantly, is this guy a genuine guy, right? Number one. Number two is that, in this entire business, there is that whole, credit that has to be given by a transporter to a shipper. That problem also you can solve, because why? If the trust element is there and it's a genuine movement, which again using ULIP various APIs you can ensure. There are fintechs which are happily able to offer that credit on behalf of the transporter to the shipper, right? And the next, of course, similar for insurance, right? So at least some of the fundamental problems are taken care of. Now comes an issue about how do you ensure that you match the supply and the demand? Because again, go back to that example of Tata Steel, right? Now, if they were to go into a freight exchange and ask for 100 trailers that day to move their goods all over India, they need to have a guarantee, like you have a guarantee when you book a ticket, right? Most of the time, right? 99% of the time that yes, the flight will take off and you will have a seat, right? That those trucks will show up. So basically, when you have contracted transporters, the contracted transporters have a legal liability to provide that, right? But in an exchange, in a spot market, it's very difficult to achieve that. So,
maybe sir, we are looking at two different things and try to achieve the airline model with the exchange. That is why we are not able to achieve it, because airline model, you know that the aircrafts are fixed. Whereas in exchange, like you have a stock exchange, you don't know whether the he is going to buy or not buy. You have given the buy price, the sell price and things. So the guarantee cannot be actually built in the freight exchange model. What guarantees can be built in?
so hold on to that thought. And I'll show you a company which has done that in the US. And they've used it as a data science and machine learning problem. So it's done now. The problem has been solved. So that's why when I talked about the freight exchange, I talked about the fact that the problem statement is very clear. How can you supply a truck with the guarantee of a contract model? If you can do that, then you will solve the problem, right? And that's the reason why I gave the truck, the airline example.
So basically, you are doing the contract in the exchange. Basically, it will be a contract. If you do a contract with the person, then of course he has to show up.
Yeah, but you don't have that control, right, on that guy. You understand what I mean?
But if we introduce contract, then he has a legal.
It's just not as easy as issuing a contract. The reason is you've got 12 million trucks, maybe owned by 3 million. What hold do you have on that guy to be able to do that control? You get what my point is? The problem in India is that this 59,000 transporters, including my transport company, Southeastern Roadways, we don't own a fleet at all. We are totally dependent on the spot truck, on the spot market rather, right? I'll come to that. Just hold that, and maybe offline also we can talk about it. Yeah.
I have a small question. So, is there the concept of insurance per trip? For example, that let's say I am sending like 50 lakhs worth across 2000 kilometers. Inside this framework, is there already the possibility in the market?
So there is a possibility, right, to do this. That's why I said, insurance is also. So essentially, what does the transporter do? The transporter is a financier because he gives credit. He is an insurance agent because he also insures in a way. Because who is the shipper going to catch the neck of? The transporter. The shipper is not concerned about the broker or the vehicle owner, right? That's why he is paying that premium of 10 to 12%, right? See, it's very easy to say that, let's disintermediate everyone. There's a 10 to 12% margin here, there's a 3 to 5% margin here. Let me go and directly connect a shipper to a truck owner, and they can share the spoils, right? The owner and of the vehicle earns 7% more, the shipper saves 7% more, you have $1 billion valuation tomorrow morning, right? But the fact of the matter is that money will be gone in 5 years, because you will not be able to solve the problem. So that's the challenge, right? So let me go on to the next slide. So what we did was we did this particular experiment, using various APIs, GST, IceGate on the demand side, right? So what does it mean? You've got all these shippers who are generating various GST invoices, right? Because everything is online. So that's actually demand, right? And on the supply side, we've got these hundreds of thousands of trucks which we are tracking again from GST data, because in part B of the current GST bills, right, GST invoices, you've got the truck number. And even if we don't have access to the GPS device on these vehicles, we can actually track through FASTag, right? I'm not saying that this has been done, so don't get me wrong here, because whatever I've just said is a massive, massive violation of God knows how many data governance and data privacy rules, right? So I'm just talking about something hypothetical. That's why I qualified this entire section as the big, hairy, audacious goal ultimately, right? So this was a conceptual note, right? And the recommendation was that if the ULIP does that, if the government does that, with all the data which is available to them, they can allow shippers to book vehicles from the GST portal itself. This is just a concept. I am not claiming that we have done it or we are anywhere close to doing it, but we have talked about it with the government authorities, right. So, anyway, so this is a little bit about the platform. This is how our platform looks like. We have got everyone connected. We charge, our customers are the shippers. We charge them typically on a per trip basis. They get their entire ecosystem, that is all their carriers onto the platform, because we solve that customer facing issue, right. And then of course we connect the end customers. On the other side, for the movement of raw materials, you've got various suppliers. The suppliers can invite their carriers, and then of course the whole loop gets completed. So this is what we essentially do, right. Yeah, just a little bit about some of our customers. And before I go into some interesting problems which I think, just to sort of gets people, creative juices going, that will be in my last slide. Let's maybe open it up to some questions both online and offline.
When we say about fleet exchange kind of thing, don't you think if we will start with sector wise, the things will be little easier? For example, construction, thing. So it would be easier to start with sector wise and probably.
So absolutely, I think. Let me give you the example of China. So in China, I don't know why I keep saying China because maybe I'm here. So in China, there is a very interesting platform called G7 Alliance. So what they have done is that they've just focused on trailers. So I wouldn't do sectors only, because for example, if I just focus on cement is typically a one-way movement. The value of the good is only about 6 rupees a kg, and the logistics cost is very, very high, right. And so that's why cement, if you see, is typically supplied in a radius of maximum 300 kilometers from a cement manufacturing plant. It cannot be supplied for longer because of the sheer logistics cost, right. Final product of a 50 kg bag of cement is only 300 rupees, right, maximum tops. So I would rather think it would be good to do a particular vehicle type, and because the ticket size is very high in trailers, right, it's typically 80,000 rupees to 1 lakh per trip, one way. I would do that rather than a particular specific sector, but maybe agriculture.
Yeah, that's right. Like, where we will have some kind of homogeneous, factor. It can be a sector, it can be a type of
lane. So basically you're talking about a lane, right? Like north, south and
north, south, or some homogeneous kind of factor.
Correct, absolutely. Food for thought for sure. Questions from students?
Freight only carries a particular good, or it carries more than one type?
So you are talking about that in a particular trip in a truck. Is it just one type of material?
The truck can be used for multiple things.
Yes, of course. Yeah, absolutely. But with some qualifications. For example, if you're carrying cement, you definitely can't carry anything else, right? Because you have the cement bags and cement is constantly being shedded, right? Chemicals are typically not mixed with anything else.
In the next trip, it can carry something like wood, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, would. So again there is a compatibility, right? Unless of course somebody takes the trouble of completely washing and cleaning a cement carrying truck, then he would do that. But can he carry, for example, concrete blocks? For sure. Can they carry steel? For sure. It doesn't matter that steel is going to be used with concrete, right? Which is a combination of cement anyways. So that there are certain limitations there.
Yes, very good presentation, and I wanted to uh, talk about a proposal which is pending with government of Uttar Pradesh to form a cooperative, and it's about 2300 acre of land near NTPC Dadri, and the land has been taken back from Reliance. So their farmers are interested to establish a cooperative relating with the fleet management system. And we had cleared 3 rounds of uh, uh, mm, funding system with the government as well as other agencies to establish this cooperative. And in the very first or second slide, you told the real problem lies with the agricultural freight movement. So I'm interested whether the ULIP platform uh, can somehow, like we have also told the advisor to the chief minister in that meeting, Arvind Kumar ji, that it has somehow it should be linked with Gati Shakti because the convergence issues with is so much difficult.
No, I got your question. Just because of keeping time into consideration, I think what I would suggest, Mr. Rawat, is we'll share my email ID in the chat. So that can be put in. Please write to me, and we'll definitely take it offline. What I can just say quickly, in a couple of sentences, is that there are a lot of initiatives happening, which is, let's say for example, multimodal logistics parks, right, MMLPs, and that's being spread, all over India, regionally. The first one has gone to Reliance in Bangalore. There's one coming up in Nagpur, etc. So again, you need to basically see what fits in with the entire master plan, and I'll be very happy to share the master plan. But let's take it offline. Okay, thank you for your question. Sorry, could you be little loud?
Flight charges can be compared in any contract using this platform.
So basically, again, see, think of ULIP as an enabler, right? So there are, sorry, in the no, let me rephrase that. In the National Logistics Policy, they have given that as one of their objectives, to establish a logistics cost index. So how exactly are they going to be able to do that over a period of time? But that is definitely in the policy as an intent. So that's going to happen, right? But understand that it's a very hard problem to solve again, right? Because you've got multiple types of vehicles, number one. Number two, the entire situation is very dynamic, based on demand and supply. So what do I mean by that? For example, if you take the eastern region of India, right, there's an imbalance. So consumption is more and production is less, right, for whatever reasons. We won't go into that. So typically what happens is that freight from all over India, the other regions to east, is always much higher than the other way around. So once they reach eastern India, they are willing to discount the freight and then come back with lesser. So again, it's a very difficult problem to solve, but I guess it can happen eventually. But that's one of the intents. Any other questions here? Any thoughts anybody has about?
But I think to answer to that, if you know the subset, the origin destination, I think many parts of your presentation can be used to find out what are the potential charges, like you have found the cost, of the diesel and all. Similarly, if you can actually join multiple pieces here.
So it's true. So I'll tell you what the problem is, right? So the problem is not that whether you can figure the ground up costing, the ABC costing. The problem is that the driver or the fleet owner is going to take his cost for, let's say, going from west to east, east to west. What typically happens is that if it's if they are going to get 0.7x on the return from east to west, from west to east the rate is 1.3x, right? Now it's difficult to guess, depending on the actual demand and supply at that point of time, is it going to be 1.4x and 0.6x, or is it going to be 1.3x and 0.7x? That is the challenge. So I have run a transport company for 25 years and we could never get it. We used to always just keep a buffer, right? And then we've got so much agriculture all over the country, right? Now orange season starts, that's the Nagpur region. The moment the orange season happens, right, freight rates just shoot up from Nagpur, because being a perishable commodity, those fellows are wanting to obviously hire the trucks at whatever price. So first that demand is taken care of, right? The capacity available is the same. So you understand where I am coming from. So it is a difficult challenge, problem to solve. Yeah. Any questions before I go on to the last slide, and then we can.
Hello, sir. My name is Lakshmi. I have a question online.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so one of the things that you mentioned is about the B2B versus B2C. The way things operate is very different, and we run a startup which is working on IoT, and one of the applications is all kinds of tracking solutions. So mostly we have seen that, except for Ashok Leyland and some large players, there isn't much of B2B tracking which seems to be in the ecosystem. Most of it where you have GPS tracking and things like that seems to be more in the B2C segment. Is this something which you feel is true, or is it a wrong impression? And also, do you see greater adoption of GPS-based tracking solutions and things like that, IoT-related solutions which can have effect on cold chain monitoring, things like that, more in the B2B domain?
Now I got a question, so let me answer all the parts that you asked. Firstly, is the adoption happening? Yes, absolutely. And I'll tell you the reason. There are multiple reasons for that. One reason is the fact that folks are understanding that visibility is very, very critical, right? And so maybe again this is a guess estimate, don't hold me to this number. I would say approximately 12 to 15% of India's trucks, 12 million trucks, have a GPS device enabled, right? Number two, the new trucks which are being sold, most OEMs are now installing telematics, right? Tata Steel, Tata Motors, Ashok Leyland, VECV, etc., right? So they are doing that. The third change which will happen is that just look back about 4-5 years back, how the adoption of FASTag happened, right? Earlier it was not mandatory. Then government gave that time over the last over maybe a 12-month period, and said that listen, FASTag has to become mandatory, right? So suddenly it moved from 30-40% to 100%. So the same thing is going to happen now with GPS, and you might have followed the news where they actually want to remove the toll gate barriers also, and they want to do it through GPS. To enable that to happen, you have to have every vehicle with a GPS device in the country. So my guess estimate is 2027 end, every truck in the country will have a GPS device. I think it's going to happen at remarkable speed. So yeah, so this is what I was telling Nari that I wanted to do. I just wanted to show about 3 interesting problems according to me, which just as an example sample set, right, that literally honestly there are hundreds of problems which are worth solving, but 3 very interesting ones which came to my mind while I was thinking about this seminar is, for example, some of you all might be aware, or let me ask it as a quiz question. How many kilometers do you think a freight train covers in India per day? A freight train. A freight train typically costs, the value of the asset must be about 25-30 crores. How many kilometers do you think it covers? Anyone wants to hazard a guess? 24 hours. Nobody wants to hazard a guess. Too close to the end of the day. Okay, so there at least we have one number. 400 or 500 kilometers, right? Any other second? Just let's have a quick second guess. 200. So, 2000 would be awesome, right? You would change the country. But actually, you're right. It's 200 kilometers. So imagine it's only 200 kilometers. That's just completely crazy, right? 200 kilometers, and that's why we wonder, why rail versus road, right? So railways fundamentally has a lot of challenges anyways. But added to that, it's only 200 kilometers a day. The reason is that the entire network is so constrained, right, and the capacity is so less. Plus, the biggest problem is that passenger trains get priority, right. So think of it as this way, that there is a train which leaves, let's say, Odisha from a steel plant, and it's making its way to Kerala. Most of the time it is just stopped. Why? Because some passenger train or the other is always on that particular track or going to come on the track, and you can't stop passenger trains, right. And the passenger trains, like whether you have the Shatabdi, whether you have the Rajdhani or whichever train you have, right. So they get priority. So that's one of the fundamental problem, right. So what we were looking at is that if we can have the data which is now going to be available through ULIP, and one can actually discuss with them and they can get that additional information quite easily. Is it possible to forecast the upcoming stops for freight trains based on their current position and locations of passenger or express trains real time on the same route, right? This can add a lot of value. And just to share some approximate numbers with you, that the total freight industry on the Indian railways is approximately 2.5 lakh crores, right? Just an improvement of 10%, right? So let's say you move this to about 240 kilometers per day, essentially can make a saving of at least $2.5 billion a year. That's how big the problem is, right? And it's there for folks to solve. So that was one thing I could think about. The other thing which is we've seen on our platform, many of you all must have heard about what 3 words, right? You have heard of what 3 words, right? So again, coming back to the B2C, B2B problem, right? We always hear about how for e-commerce the address problem, right, is still getting solved, because at least I know, I can speak about myself. Every time I I order a package from Amazon, for some reason or the other, the guy will still call me up to ask me where my house is, right? The guy is just not figured it out, right? Because it's always a different guy, or maybe that's the way they want to do it, right? They want to save time. But the issue is that for the B2B world, there are about 10 million to about 25 million enterprises. If one can figure out and sorry, just to give you some context, in the last 3 years, we have actually developed about 100,000 geofences only, and that's the highest number in our space. We've been able to do that. Half of it has actually been done manually, right, by going and this is not just the point, right, I'm talking about a polygonal geofence. So if somebody can sort of solve this problem, right, and actually create with fair degree of accuracy for 25 million, there's a market where every API call, somebody would be gladly willing to give one rupee for the data, right? And you're not talking about just 10 million or 20 million, it would be billions of API calls on an annual basis. So again, this is, how do you solve this particular problem, right? Not by brute force and getting 10,000 people to draw polygonal geofences, right? You need to have some automated AI, ML kind of a system. So, this is the second problem I was thinking. Third problem is a problem we are actually trying to solve in our company, determine the distribution of cargo / load amongst carriers, considering the availability of the vehicles, the proximity of these vehicles to the loading area, and as per the contract the allocation percentages. I can make it even more complicated and say that, listen, hey, let us say a steel plant has to dispatch 15,000 tons of cargo in a particular day, or in a week they have to send, let us say, maybe 150,000. They know the cost of rail cum road, they know the availability of the train, they know the cost of the train, they know the cost of their contracts. Can a system basically give them a plan for the entire week and say, this is your optimized for cost, this is optimized for service, or this is 70% optimized for cost, 30% optimized for service, right? So, again, these are actual problems to be solved, and there is a lot of value which and we hope to collaborate in fact with IIT Madras on the third problem. Finally, I will end with a current problem that we are solving with IITM students, which is identify the open tracks in the Indian Railways geoson data and complete the loops to ensure continuous connectivity of the tracks. Why are you trying to solve, why are we trying to solve the problem? Hard to believe, but there is no accurate database available of Indian Railways tracks. We can't even get it from Indian Railways because Indian Railways doesn't know. They don't have accurate information of their own tracks. That's how big the problem is, right? But these are all problems which are there to solve. So, I thought I would just end that with the last slide, just to sort of ignite some kind of a thought process, and thank you very much.